Hi guys, we seriously need to raise one question, or at least I am raising the question. Let me know if you agree or disagree with me in the comments. And the question is the following: why are they not raising the alert level at Campi Flegrei in southern Italy? And why am I raising this question now? For the ones of you who are following my channel and are watching my videos, you know what has been going on in Italy recently at the supervolcano Campi Flegrei near Naples, with more than 3 million people in the area. Naples is like bedded between two super scary guys, Vesuvius and the supervolcano Campi Flegrei. And scientists are giving warnings, and we have seen just on May 20th till May 21st, the biggest earthquake that this region has seen in over 40 years, a magnitude 4.4 earthquake that did shake the region and cause some damage. So why are they not raising the alert level? And I'm raising the question because I've done some research. I've done some research about what happened in 2023. There was an earthquake swarm in October 2023. That wasn't even that big. The highest earthquake had only a magnitude of 4, so not 4.4 like we have now. And after that earthquake swarm that just happened this May, we just had another one where the highest was 3.7 with 4 more over magnitude 3.5. So let's have a quick look. It's really interesting to look at what happened in October 2023, because what I have found an article in the newspaper Scientific American, and they are saying that, and that's their headline, and that's why it caught my eye. I'm like, what are they saying about this? Their headline is: a huge Italian volcano could be ready to erupt. And they're talking about, if you see here, Italy's Campi Flegrei volcano has caused thousands of recent earthquakes and pushed up the ground, and that worries 1.3 million residents. Well, that worries more than 1.3 actually. We're talking about roughly over 3 million people. So they're speaking of thousands of earthquakes. Well, they have just released the recent bulletin about the month of May. And this May alone, Campi Flegrei has seen over 1,500 tremors in 1 month. That's the largest amount they have ever had. So what I want to lead up to is they were really concerned back in October, but it seems they're less concerned now, or do they not want to create panic? That's the question I'm raising as well. So let's have a closer look at what happened in October 2nd, to be specific. They're saying a worrisome earthquake shook the towns above Campi Flegrei because they're building on top of that supervolcano. They have built. The volcano stretches in an area of roughly 100 kilometers, and it also stretches into the Gulf of Pozzuoli as well, so underwater. So they're calling Campi Flegrei a huge, long dormant volcano has been struck by these earthquakes that is located immediately west of Naples, whipping local media and authorities into a frenzy. So journalists speculated that lava might start flowing from the volcano. Well, flowing, that would be a good scenario. If Campi Flegrei erupts, it's most likely going to be quite a blast. So the lava flow that comes after the blast, I would say, is the lesser of the evil than the immediate blast. So journalists at that time were worried about a lava flow that might threaten 1.3 million people who live in high-risk areas near its center. So the thing is, what they get wrong, if you look at the red zone of Vesuvius, for example, there's 700,000 people. If Vesuvius erupts, these 700,000 people do not have a chance to run away. If you get what I mean, they don't need to worry about lava flow. And it's the same with Campi Flegrei. So at that time, it's not long ago, right? October 2nd, 2023. Volcanologists called for existing evacuation plans. And these plans at that time assumed that an eruption can be predicted 72 hours in advance. So at that time already, scientists called for these plans to be updated to include the possibility of having to evacuate all those people after an eruption has already begun. So we know that scientists recently, just right now, are saying your evacuation plans are not working. We need new ones. We need ones that are prepared to evacuate on land, but also on sea and over the water if it doesn't erupt in the water. Then it could send 100 feet, a 30-meter tsunami wave towards Naples, which is also, in addition to a volcanic eruption, quite a huge problem. But they have released an evacuation plan after this magnitude 4.4 earthquake that we have seen in May. And that evacuation plan calls for, and it'll blast your mind, 143,000 people. So they say, well, we have 500 bus drivers and they should drive out 143,000 people. And then they say, well, that whole evacuation plan is roughly for 350,000 people. The other 200,000, they will do it themselves. So how does that work, guys? Let's imagine you have a massive blast of a volcano. The sky gets red, it gets dark, there's dust everywhere. Let's say these people survive the initial blast. Let's just assume. I don't believe in that, but let's assume. Or then they're going calmly to some buses where the bus drivers are calmly waiting. No way. These bus drivers will take the buses and leave, and people will be in panic. They won't even see where they're going. And there's going to be a massive earthquake swarm that comes before this eruption. Homes will collapse, roads will be blocked, right? And then let's say the other 200,000 people that should fend for themselves, they're in cars blocking the roads, running around in panic. So it's going to be a gong show. That's how I would call it, guys. So that's not working, and the scientists are giving a dire warning. And in March, Roberto Scandone, he's a seasoned scientist who has observed Campi Flegrei for over 4 decades. He said in March, before we even saw that big earthquake swarm in May, he said, if I had the funds, I would evacuate now. And he's not saying this because he woke up one day and said, it's time to evacuate. His opinion is based on his observations. So let's get back to October 2023. So their evacuation plan, they think they have 72 hours. 72 hours is even a narrow time frame to evacuate millions of people. They want to update this plan so that it includes the possibility of having to evacuate all those people after an eruption had already begun. Well, good luck with that, I have to say. This works well if you've watched my videos about Iceland with this non-explosive eruptions where the lava is flowing. Yes, it's a fast flowing lava, but enough time to evacuate people. And there's not millions of people. There's 4,000 people in Grindavik. And then there's always the Lagunis. Yeah, they're waiting to the last minute. So that's why we've seen videos where tourists filming themselves. The skies are red. They're running out there in panic, right? But that's self-made. You don't have to be there, right? If you know that this volcanic eruption is going to happen. So the Minister of Civil Protection, Nello Musumeci, said on October 31st last year that he would consider raising the alarm level if the seismic activity continued. Well, we're halfway into 2024 and the seismic activity is continuing. It's getting even stronger. We've seen 4.4, the largest one since the 80s. And the scientists have said after this one, be prepared, we could see a number 5 as well. And it's not that in between the latest that we just had a few days ago, the 3.7 and the May 20th, we have seen basically on a regular base some smaller earthquake swarm with a 1.9, with a 2.7, with a 1.5. So it has been constantly going. Plus, we have seen an acceleration in the land rise. The land used to rise quite gradually, 1 centimeter per month, and then it was going up to 2 centimeters per month, and then it was going up even steeper after the May 20th event. So now they're saying after May 20th, when it did rise 2 centimeters in just 4 days, so a whole monthly rate in 4 days. The scientists of the Vesuvius Observatory were saying that it's just fluctuations. So fluctuations in the measuring instruments, I call it pretty weird because they have shown their graphs and basically different measurement stations did show that sudden increase, right? And if you're watching my Iceland videos, you know what it means. Earthquakes combined with land rise. Something's grinding underneath that maybe wants to come up to the surface. So Musumeci said back in 2023, at the end of October, he would consider raising the alert level if the earthquakes continued. So why hasn't he? Question mark. So what would raising this alert level, had he done that, trigger? So that would activate the evacuation of certain hospitals and prisons and encourage the most immediate 500,000 residents to voluntarily leave their homes. So maybe you remember May 20th, 4.4 hits, people are running out on the streets. What did they do? They evacuated the women's prison in Pozzuoli. So why did they do this? If this is only something you should do when the alert level is raised, I'm raising that question because if they did evacuate the prison, they didn't evacuate the hospitals, and they did not encourage the most immediate 500,000 residents to voluntarily leave their homes. So this article of Scientific American continues. They have monitored what happened after that earthquake swarm in October. After a few weeks that were a little bit more quiet, where not too much happened, another swarm of tremors shook the area again just a month later, November 23rd. And then the media speculated again about the likelihood of magma rising to the surface. So November 23rd, that's basically 6 months ago. And yes, already 6 months ago, they said the 4.0 October earthquake and the hundreds more that since then have happened are defining the most intense period of seismic activity that Campi Flegrei has exhibited in decades. And we know what came after, even more activity at higher levels. So they're also saying that in the 2 months before October 2nd, more than 2,000 low magnitude tremors were recorded in the region, including this 4.0, the strongest quake since 1983. Monitoring systems showed that the ground in some places had risen by 1 meter 17 since 2005, and here it comes. And 2/3 of that land rise had happened since 2016. And we already know that land has risen about 10 centimeters in 2024, like overall. They further report that tension among residents has remained high because scientists don't know for sure what's going on underneath the surface. We know a little bit more by now because there has been a groundbreaking study that has confirmed the not good news that a shallow magma chamber is at a depth of only between 4 and 5 kilometers. So they didn't know that at this time. So now we have a more shallow magma chamber that does not need to go to grind a long way to potentially come up to the surface. They're saying the scientists don't know for sure what's going on under the surface, and that is true. The science is not very far progressed when it comes to volcanoes and earthquakes, and especially when these volcanoes do not erupt on a regular base, so that you would have data that you can analyze. And then, like in Iceland right now, right? It's already the 8th event since October last year. So now they know, oh, okay, land keeps rising. So when the magma chamber has a potential amount of X, then we could see the next eruption. So it's not progressed that far, but what they said last year, the scientific community agrees that the tremors and the uplift are signs that the volcano is awakening. And I'm just wondering, when I look at the recent news that are coming from officials, they're not really talking about the volcano. They're only talking about earthquakes, seismic events. We need to learn how to live with these seismic events. We need to spend money to upgrade homes for these seismic events. We need to have an evacuation plan for seismic events. And I'm wondering, well, guys, yeah, there's going to be earthquakes, but are you kind of forgetting why there are these earthquakes? Because something is rumbling, grinding through the surface. I mean, they're kind of forgetting the bigger picture, right? This is what kind of baffles me, and it's like I'm torn between, are they giving up because they know they can't save anyone anyway? So basically, let's prepare for continued earthquakes so that at least the homes won't collapse, so that they won't block the roads, so that nobody will be endangered by these homes that could collapse or crack, because these are old homes, stone homes. So these earthquakes now, and they're like horizontally rattling, not up and down, which causes quite extensive damage to foundations and these old stone walls. And what's basically damages these homes the most are these repeated swarms of tremors adding to the damages, right? So they want to spend 500 to 700 million euros to upgrade these homes. But as I said, I don't hear anybody except some scientists that do work at the local Vesuvius Observatory and the Institute of Volcanology and Geology of Italy. Those guys are kind of saying, guys, update your evacuation plans. You also need to prepare for an eruption, because even if it's a small eruption, it can be devastating. But science ignored what's happening. So what that report from 2023 is basically saying is the scientists are worried because they clearly see the signs that the volcano is awakening, but they are struggling to rectify two competing explanations for the bulging ground. And these theories have been debated for decades and leaving residents and researchers uneasy. So they're further saying an answer to the geological mystery could bring scientists much closer to determining how likely the volcano is to blow. It could also provide geologists worldwide with warning signs they could look for when other big volcanoes start rumbling, especially supervolcanoes such as Yellowstone, that's in the northwestern US, Toba in Indonesia, and the Altiplano Puna volcanic complex in Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. So to find out the characteristics of these supervolcanoes is beneficial not only for Campi Flegrei, but for others as well. And you know, most of the people are scared of Yellowstone, and they are aware if this blows, it'll have an impact on the whole world, because the ashes and the particles that volcano will spit it up in the atmosphere so far and so much that it'll go around the globe. It can lead to short ice ages, to food shortages, because if there's no sunlight that can reach the earth, if these particles are blocking the sun, nothing will grow. And scientists have said, if Campi Flegrei creates a supervolcanic eruption, the world has 74 days of food supply left. Check out that video. I'll put it in the end screen. So that's really, really scary. And the Campi Flegrei eruption has produced a little ice age in the very past, and might have been responsible, many scientists think, has been responsible for the extinction of the Neanderthals. So it is worrying. So let's talk about these two scenarios. So one scenario is, they call it the shallow magma model. Because this is 6 months in the past. We know more by now. So this model says that the seismicity and bulging are caused by magma pushing to break through the surface, making its way for an explosive eruption with violent magma outflow, highly likely in the near term. In the near term. Alternatively, in the hot fluids model, that's something else, that's the second model, steam and hot gases released by magma located deeper underground are to blame. And here comes the groundbreaking study, guys. They didn't know this at that time, at the end of 2023, but we know now that a magma chamber is confirmed to be only at a shallow depth of 4 to 5 kilometers. So which model is more likely? Let me know in the comments, but let's listen further. So let's say we're talking about the second model, that it's only hot fluids, steam, and hot gases that are released by magma that is deeper down. In that case, this ongoing seismic activity could stop abruptly or peak in a phreatic eruption. So a phreatic eruption doesn't spew out lava. It's just basically an explosion that throws out these little volcanic rocks and particles, which is also not really good. If you know what happened in New Zealand at White Island, that was a phreatic eruption. I have a video about that as well. Check it out. So this is not that we can say this is a great scenario as well, right? So both scenarios end with an eruption. So they explain it. Phreatic eruption. The volcano would spurt out hot liquids, gases, and rock fragments instead of lava. This would pose a lesser threat, yes, but you have the choice between ultra bad, the worst that you can have, and a little less, right? So they say, yeah, it will pose a lesser threat, although it would still be a lethal one because so many people live close by. And now let's go back 6 months in the future. They're talking about earthquakes, right? And what to do and how to prepare for the earthquakes. So they're quoting an associate professor of geochemistry and volcanology at the University of Campania, Luigi Vanvitelli in Italy. So this University of Campania, we know Vesuvius and Campi Flegrei are in the Campania region. So this university should know what they're talking about because they're in that region. So that associate professor, his name is Roberto Moretti, he says, everyone agrees that magma is involved. So no doubt about that. He is a proponent of the hot fluids model, and he has been supporting that model since 2013. The problem is that the scientists agree that magma is involved, but they disagree on what role that magma plays exactly and how consequently how close it is to the surface. Well, we know now it's closer than anticipated, and that's worrisome. And the authorities tried to keep this under the rug for a while, and it leaked out just a few months ago. And not even like the mayor of Pozzuoli knew about this, although Pozzuoli is on top of it, right on top of it. They would be the first to go. They were upset. They were really upset that they weren't informed about this immediately. So it raises the question, why did they not inform anyone right away? Back in 2023, Roberto Moretti, who was a supporter of the fluid theory, said the question is, where is the magma? We kind of know that now. So I would like to know if he still supports the fluid theory. And the thing is, guys, Campi Flegrei, the Phlegraean fields, that the name is burning fields. There are 24 craters. You see it in the aerial pictures. It looked like bombs were falling from the sky, creating these craters. Campi Flegrei doesn't throw over Naples like Vesuvius does, like showing off and telling them, hey, if I erupt, you're done. Campi Flegrei is more like, I've got such fertile soil in all of my craters and along them. Why don't you settle here? And then, you know what I mean? A third of Campi Flegrei is in the sea. It is underwater. So it's between the Italian mainland and the country's island of Sardinia. The Campi Flegrei volcano has been active for at least 80,000 years. So the caldera, that's this depression that was created when the magma chambers underneath were emptying out, that did cause a collapse of the roof of that volcano. We're looking at Iceland. We're having a magma chamber underneath the lagoons that might be emptying out and eventually collapse, question mark? Who knows what's going to happen with our lagoons? If you watch my channel on a regular basis, you know what I mean. So this basically how Campi Flegrei looks right now with these collapsed calderas. This was formed after two violent eruptions, one 39,000 years ago and one 15,000 years ago. So the older one that happened 39,000 years ago caused a volcanic winter in areas within the first 100 kilometers, and it sent ash as far away as Russia and abruptly cooled the climate around the world. So that would solve another issue that, that's why, I mean, do we really all have to leave our cars behind and go back to riding mules and horses? I mean, we just need one of these volcanoes to erupt and right? So let's leave the cows alive, I would say. And no, it's a different topic. I don't want to go into that. No, but really seriously, guys, these volcanoes are a threat. And if you look at this, it erupted 39,000 years ago and then 15,000 years ago. So it has kind of a pattern that we could be in a phase where it could be ready for another eruption. So the most recent eruption was in 1538. After that eruption, the volcano went quiet. So scientists are saying that by now, any previous connection between the molten rock, the magma underground, and the surface has been sealed up. So that, therefore, as a result, the crust that is on top of it, if you look at this graphic that has been released together with this new study where they confirm that shallow magma body, the crust serves as a barrier. before another eruption can take place. But a new study has confirmed that because of all this rumbling and the Brady seism, that land rise and subsiding, the crust has been weakened. The crust right now has only 1/3 of its maximum capacity. So it's getting brittle, it's getting worn out. So that is another point that is concerning. And as the scientists say, the crust is the barrier, and another eruption can only take place when the crust has been ruptured. And the magma needs to rupture that crust to create a new pathway for lava or fluids to breach that crust. So now we know the crust is weakened. We have the land rise, we have the earthquakes, we have the shallow magma chamber confirmed. I'm asking the question again, why do they not raise the alert level? Scientists think that this rupturing of that crust that keeps the lid on has been going on since the 1950s, because at that time modest seismicity started, paired with the slow flexing Brady seism, like uplift and sinking, uplift and sinking. If I have a rubber band and I keep doing this all the time, or just using it for my hair, it wears out. It's getting longer and longer and longer because the elasticity gets lost until I can't stretch it anymore. It won't, you know what I mean? It won't hold together that good anymore. So scientists say that pressure from below the top part of the Earth's crust pushes against it at a depth of 2 to 3 kilometers, causing it to stretch and fracture, creating superficial earthquakes and this surface bulge. And we have these superficial earthquakes. You know, even a 1.9, a 1.7 that just a few days ago happened can be felt by the residents in quite a large radius. And they can only be felt because they are so shallow. Then they had this event in the 1980s. You can see it here in the graph as well. Between 1982 and 1984, the ground did rise 1.8 meters, and they did trigger an evacuation. So some 30,000 people were evacuated in what many scientists consider an aborted eruption. So they think the volcano was about to erupt. Magma was rising up to the surface, but it somehow did stop. And if you're watching my Iceland videos, November 10th, it was shaking like crazy and magma was shooting out, creating that 15-kilometer long magma dike underneath the surface. But for some reason, it didn't cause an eruption. 4 weeks or 5 weeks later, same event happened again. Land was rising, earthquakes rumbling, poof, there was an eruption. And since then, it keeps producing eruptions roughly once a month and one more intrusion. So that's why I'm wondering, after May 20th, you know, the land was rising. Then May 20th, the earthquake shake. And then it was at a standstill, and then it was rising again. So was there a little intrusion, magma on the way, but it didn't reach the surface? That's the question I raise. Was that really a fluctuation, how they call it? I have my doubts about that. And you know, I don't hear this recently from authorities or in the news that they talk about an aborted eruption in the 1980s. So they thought, or they think, that in the 1980s, magma did ascend close to the surface. And something then did bring it to a halt. And then the ground began deflating again until 2004. Because 2004, 2005, the current uplift began. And we know in Iceland, the period is land keeps rising for 4 weeks, eruption, land subsides, then land keeps rising again. This volcano has a longer time frame between events. So was there an intrusion in 1984? There's an interesting paper that has been released in 2023 as well by Kilburn. It's called Communications, Earth and Environment. And he says that each uplift episode, each Brady seism episode stretches the crust further. It stretches the crust, creating conditions more favorable to a rupture and opening a pathway for an eruption. And I know my regular viewers will ask about the lagoonies because the magma chamber is right underneath the Blue Lagoon and it keeps stretching and subsiding and stretching and subsiding. Make up your own mind what you think if it's so safe to swim in that pool, right? So they all agree this Brady seism could rupture the surface, making way for an eruption. But there is also a division amongst scientists. The shallow magma model, which is now confirmed, says that rising magma is piling pressure on the crust, because if that magma chamber is filling up, it's expanding. That's why it's putting pressure on the crust, right? If I stretch that rubber band. And they say this happened when the ground was rising in the 1980s. And then there's the hot fluids model that says the magma sits deeper, but it's sending larger and larger quantities of steam and hot gases towards the surface. Well, we know now that the magma doesn't lie deeper. It's confirmed, 4 to 5 kilometers. So should we abandon that hot fluids model? That's another question I'm raising. What do you think, guys? Really, let's discuss this. The scientists are saying that finding definitive evidence for either model remains elusive. But as I said, I think the magma chamber is confirmed by now. So the geophysicists lack direct access to the complex underground phenomenon that they're studying. They don't know what's going on underneath. They analyze the indirect signals of those processes that reach the surface, such as seismicity, ground uplift, and gases emitted by vents that are called fumaroles. And they're in the Solfatara area, right in this gray area that you see behind me. And that's not only unique to Campi Flegrei. So whenever a volcano awakens, scientists need to use their imagination what these signs might mean. And here comes another very interesting part, guys. And I know you've raised the question in Iceland as well. Why don't they do boreholes to find out where the magma is? So yes, this is one method of investigation that scientists could do. Boreholes are the most efficient way to directly study the geology of volcanoes. And there is a research director at Italy's National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology, the INGV. His name is Giuseppe Di Natale. He wants to do that. He already led efforts to drill a 500-meter pilot borehole back in 2012 that provided scientists with more precise stratigraphical information about the origins and boundaries of the caldera. But what was the problem? Local politicians and media, together with another local scientists, basically began to wage war on him and on his project, describing it as dangerous. So they turned public opinion against him and did prevent him from drilling a second borehole that would go deeper, that would go 3.5 kilometers deep. So his guys that did the funding for him have pulled their support. It has been brought up in the recent weeks and months again, whether that project should be reinstated, and maybe it will. And the good thing is, at least this groundbreaking study has now confirmation of that magma chamber. So, but I think in light of the recent events and how this landrise keeps behaving and how these earthquakes keep increasing in magnitude, but also in quantity, something needs to be done. And I don't think they can put their heads in the sand. And I know it's hard to imagine because for me especially, I love Italy so much, and I've been in Italy many, many times. The people are beautiful, the energy that goes there, and you know, it's, I can't even imagine. And I just so hope that it's not happening, right? But if it is happening, at least get people to safety, and all of them. You've heard in my last video, one of my viewers, and I'm thankful for that, has pointed out the family structures, and Italian families, they don't leave anyone behind. So either all of them or nobody. So that needs to be taken into account in evacuation programs as well. So that between families, they have a plan. Where would we all meet? Who do we pick up? Grandma, grandpa, who's disabled? How do we do this, right? So that was my update about Campi Flegrei today. Gave you something to think, hopefully, about, you know, how can we transport what they were talking about in just a few months ago to the current situation? And are the authorities speaking openly enough about the risk? I have a feeling they're kind of pushing the scientists away that are giving these warnings. You've seen it in my other videos. I've quoted these scientists. I've named them. And they work for the INGV. So they're not living somewhere else in the world. They sit right on the volcano, and they go there probably every day. And they're watching all these seismic stations, 35 seismic stations on land and in water, evaluating data on a daily, hourly base. It's 24 hours monitored, guys, right? So guys, a lot of it is going on in Iceland as well. I just released an update. It's in the end screen. Check it out, guys. And I hope I'll see you very, very soon. And guys, I still have an outtake that I wanted to show you like 2 weeks ago. I completely forgot about this. This video is already so long. I won't do it in this one, but in the next one, maybe. So stay tuned. I'll tease you a little bit to come back. It's like a TV show. I'll give you a little bit insight on what's happening in the next episode. I am so grateful, guys, that you are here. Give this video a like, please. And if you're new here, hey, join us, subscribe. I'd love to see you again. Now I'm out of here, guys. Bye-bye.